Everybody to the second day of Norway Chess, a live Super Grandmaster tournament with 6 players involved, double round robin style. I've talked about the format already in part 1, but I'll say it again here. Each player gets 2 hours to begin the game, no bonus time until the 40th move, and if the game ends in a draw, they sit right back down with the same colors, 10 minutes for white, 7 minutes for black, draw odds, so if black draws the game, black actually wins, and that's the way the tournament works, and that's the way the standings are counted up. Today, we begin with Levon Aronian versus Aryan Tari. It's also Levon's birthday, so yeah. Also, the title of the video and the thumbnail will become relevant in a second. So we get a Rue Lopez, King's Pawn, Knight f3, Knight c6 with Bishop b5, and we get a a6, Bishop back to a4, Knight f6, and castles. This is considered the main line. There are so many things that can happen here that white can do and black can do, and black can choose which setup to play. So I'm going to basically fast forward to move 8 for black. Whether or not black goes d6 or d5 determines whether it's a marshal. And the marshal variation is d5, sacrificing the e5 pawn and c6. So you'll notice that this pawn has been given away. And the way normally this is played is black solidifies the knight, puts the bishop like this, tries to play queen to h4, the bishop is active, the second bishop is active, the queen is coming this way, and this is considered the marshal, and it's considered very decent for black, very good for black. The problem in this case is that Tari is playing this against Levon Aronian. Levon Aronian's playing white, and Levon Aronian has played the marshal himself for 20 years. So, good luck. And Levon plays rook e1. Now, normally the big decision here that white takes is where to put this d-pawn, d3 or d4, and then he plays rook e1. He just doesn't do that, and now we see why. He prevents queen h4 entirely. He delays the move, queen h4, he delays the move, sorry, d4, but prevents the queen from coming here, natural development, and now this. And essentially, if Aronian's able to glue his position shut and not lose on this side of the board, then he'll just be winning. He's just up a pawn. These pawns are overextended. In the future, he will play this very important pawn move that which activates his rook and damages the structure. And if these pawns are damaged, the knight is going to be under attack and so on. So queen g6, knight d2, queen drops back to g2 from where it pressures the knight and is just safe. I mean, there's nowhere else better for the queen to be. And queen h5, and at this point it was it seemed very obvious to us that Levon would be playing the move a4. He obviously didn't like something, because instead of a4, he played a move which absolutely baffled me, and that move was h4. And then a few moves later, he played a4 anyway. And that is why we have the thumbnail that we have, and that is why the crab is mentioned. It took Levon 22 moves, but he's trying to do the crab on Aryan Tari. This move, I can't quite explain to you. I think he played h4 because he didn't want to get hit with this, where he would have to put his queen on h1. I think that's why he did it. Now bishop h3 is no longer possible. The other one just makes more sense. And now Tari plays bishop f3. Levon throws in this move because you can't take the queen. I would take with check. And even though it's not mate, I would be winning way too many pieces here. So queen comes out and parks itself on h2. And despite the really awkward positioning here of the queen, Levon's actually completely fine. He breaks in on that side. He trades some pieces down, trades the queens, trades like this. And now this cannot be taken, because if it were to be taken, you could pause here, but if you're watching live, you can't really pause, so just take a deep breath. How does white win here? Rook to e1. And you are this is unstoppable. f3 is coming. There's nothing you can do to protect your rook. I'm just going to win your bishop. Because if rook e7, f3 anyway, that's not actually protecting the rook, because it's pinned. So rook would take, and yeah, rook e1 is a devastating quiet move. And it makes all of this work, and then Levon glues it shut, trades, And what do you know about opposite-colored bishop endgames, right? We know that if material is more or less the same, if it was just a bishop endgame, probably the chances are for black to hold it. But here white has pawn up, more space, more active pieces, no weaknesses, and black potentially has 4 weaknesses that could arise in the endgame, and white has a protected pass pawn. Now watch as Levon very easily advances his king, brings the rook back to kick out the bishop with the move b3, forces the bishop to go to f1, gives a check, plants his bishop on this diagonal, so the king can always come this way. Rook takes g3 is not really a problem, because king to f2, and so bishop g2 was played in the game. King d4, it's still not a problem, because even if this were to happen, you just push. The bishop on this diagonal, the pass pawn, and rook a8 is basically mate, or it's unstoppable, you're just going to promote the pawn. And so instead we got rook c6, and he transferred the rook over, pushed the pawn, played the very nice move rook f7, and if rook takes, pawn takes, and the king is geometrically prevented from stopping the pawn, rook f7 was played, Aryan Tari resigned the game. Flawless game. Very nice game from Levon on his birthday. Kudos to him. He gets 3 points for the win, not 1, because as I said, there's an Armageddon segment, so he gets 3 points for winning in a slow game. Very nice win from Levon. You could skip ahead to the Magnus section, not on Twitch. You can't. On Twitch, you can't. But on YouTube, Magnus will be covered later because he played 2 games, spoiler alert. But the other game that was a very long game was a game between Fabiano Caruana and Jan-Krzysztof Duda. It was a Slav defense, an exchange Slav, which got to a pretty theoretical position early. The opening not incredibly important, but whoops, I just spoiled the entire game. But let's go to this position first. In the opening, Duda could have developed his dark squared bishop, and he didn't. Instead, he took on e2 and then did it, and then just suffered the entire game. The only thing that white has here is the bishop pair. The position is completely similar otherwise. The structure is the same. The pieces are more or less the same. And notice how in the Slav defense, he uses the open file, advances on that side of the board, puts the rook, puts the knight, and Duda was backing up the entire game. At this point, right around here, I'll say right here, this is move 25. Duda at this point has like 5 minutes to make 15 moves, something completely disgusting, like terrible time trouble. And Caruana just brings in his pieces and trades and plays this nice idea, queen c6. And if you take, I'm going to take with my b pawn. I now have a pass pawn before it's just frozen. So he goes here and take, take, take. Gets rid of 2 pieces. And the engine was trying to figure out whether or not this is completely winning for white. And normally 2 pieces for the rook should be good, very good. But with the symmetrical structure and no imbalance of pawns, it's not so simple. But Caruana began the process. So first I will just take you to move 40. This is move 40, 41. Now the players have a 10-second bonus, but they were both below 1 minute. This game went for another 50 moves. Okay? So we trade 1 pawn. Then we offer a second pawn trade, because we need to chip away at black's defenses. So we do this. Okay? Now knight c6 is a nice idea. Can't take the bishop because of fork. Transfers his knight to the outpost. Right? Very solid position for black, but the pieces are far enough and you have enough material that you're going to create weaknesses and attack them. And that's what he does. He creates 1 more target, right? And then fast forward to move 69, and he plays this nice move, e takes d5, e takes d5. So black is left with 3 weaknesses. Now, this endgame, during the course of the broadcast, broke the engine. Ceci was saying this is +8. White is completely winning. But if you looked at Ceci, it didn't give you any winning plan. Black is in time to just sit back and defend everything. Black can defend this, this, and this with no problem. And you'll see that. You'll see as Duda just sits back. And his pawns can't get taken. He's stopping knight f7. If knight f3, Oops, sorry. If knight f3, rook g7. There is no way to protect. It was saying +8, saying some stuff. No. Nope. But then Duda did some crazy stuff. Well, he brought his rook back. But then the second time, he did not bring his rook back. He put his rook this way. And he got locked out. His rook got locked out. His rook got locked out. And now you're just going here, and you're winning the b6 pawn. Just, I mean, crazy. He loses the b6 pawn, and now it's winning because the pawn is promoting, and that's exactly what happened. I mean, yes, black also has his own pawn, but it's never promoting. And the game ended right here, where b8 queen is now no longer stoppable. Like, 2 games in a row, Duda loses to a promotion. And now Duda has 0 out of 6 potential points. And Fabiano Caruana is 6 points. 2 wins in Classical. So very nice win from Fabi, start to finish, cruise control. But the engine was going insane. It was like saying that this is completely winning, but it couldn't do anything to me. And yeah, I mean, wow, just rook on g1 and just got locked out, lost his pawn. Tough position to defend, I understand, with no time, but it is what it is. And Fabiano wins. Now, Magnus Carlsen, Alireza Firouzja. This is the Classical game. I did say they played 2, which means you know the result of the first game, but let's see what happened. So Magnus Carlsen goes for an exchange Queen's Gambit declined against Firouzja, plays a classical way, and you'll see why this way is considered not super accurate, because what white does is white will put the bishop on d3, then play f3, rotate the bishop back this way, and try to push the e-pawn forward. So we get this. This is the way it's played, and instead of playing the more natural knight to f3, you'll play f3 and bishop f2. This is the way the exchange Queen's Gambit declined is played. If you want a little bit more of an advanced lesson in the Queen's Gambit declined, this is how it goes. And then you try to push for e4, but Alireza went for a queenside attack with b5, b4, c6, c5, and right here could have even continued with c4, and this is just chaos. But Magnus planted the knight on f5, and then this trade occurred and had some nagging pressure. Alireza has this isolated pawn. You know, the d4 square is somewhere where Magnus plants his knight, but for the most part, Alireza defended very well. Later in the game came a trade of queens, and this cool idea from Alireza, gluing this bishop, which glues this pawn, and the open A file. Oops, the open A file targeting the A2 pawn. Magnus parked the bishop back on b1 to defend, and then later played this move b3, locking his pawn structure. The players shuffled around a little bit, not too much occurred, no trades. Magnus began expanding on this side of the board. There was one tactical moment pointed out here that Alireza could have played bishop takes e3, a stunning little move. The rooks see each other. So if you take this bishop, I take the rook, but I would go here, check, here, here. But this position is just bad for black. Despite black being up a pawn, his structure is frozen. I will go here and try to gobble. So this is not so good. And instead, Alireza himself later played a nice idea, rook c2. Looks like just a loss of a rook, but trying to open up counterplay like this. Magnus instead gave away his own pawn, but because the pawns are so bad for black, despite being a pawn up, he's unable to do anything. All the pieces get simplified, and a few moves later, the players agree to a draw in this position. Rook and 3, which means we go to Armageddon. Magnus Carlsen has white, he has 10 minutes. Alireza has black, he has 7 minutes. On move 41, they will get 1 second of bonus time. Until then, there is no bonus. Here we go. Another Queen's Gambit declined, an exchange variation with a solid position for black. This time, Magnus goes for Queen c2 and Knight f3. Alireza jumps into the center with Knight to e4, trying to trade some pieces. And Magnus castles long. This is not very good. However, Magnus is fully aware that the Queen's Gambit declined is an extremely solid weapon, and you're not just going to break it by, well, being solid and trying to beat the guy on time. It's just not going to happen. So Magnus sacrifices his g-pawn for the e-pawn and plays knight to g3. The problem is that you actually have 0 attack. And instead, he blundered the move queen to f6. He extended in the center, and now 2 of his pawns are about to be hanging. So he sacrifices one via en passant, You don't know what en passant... Sometimes I get asked these questions in YouTube videos. They're like, how did that happen? En passant is a rule of chess. So he's blockades this pawn and then plays rook g1 and knight h5. That's his idea. But Alireza snuffs that out real quick. And at this point, it's move 26. Magnus has no time advantage anymore. It's completely the same. About 3 minutes per player. And the position is -6. I repeat, the position is -6. Because Alireza is completely winning. He has a pass pawn in the f-file. These pawns ain't nothing. So rook e1, king to h8. Rook d3, rook comes in. And right here, the big moment, the capture on f3. And for reasons I cannot explain, Alireza did not take, and take this pawn with check. I don't know what he missed. I don't know what he saw or didn't see. After rook to e2, he can just go back to h3, attacking the queen. But he has a very cool move. Queen takes knight. And then if takes, take the queen. And then if this, you have this. And the endgame is just winning for him. I mean, it's just a winning endgame. Oh, sorry. You can also go here, which is kind of cool. And this. And it's just over because black is winning by 1 pawn, has 2 connected pawns on the queen side. And this is just lost. Yes, the rook is hanging, but you can move it. I see Tirzu in the chat. I'm going to break the 4th wall here. Tirzu, we're recording for YouTube right now. YouTubers, go check out Tirzu if you don't already for some reason. Not going to talk about myself, but... instead, here's what happened. He played knight takes g3. The players traded a bunch of pieces. Rook and 5 versus rook and 5, right? King g8, king a3. At this point, Magnus has like 20 seconds, but it's move 36. So we fast forward to move 40. Both players have a bonus second and about 10 seconds on the clock. Here we go. You guys ready? King c4. Okay? Rook g4. King d3, and here Alireza was winning. He had a nice tactical shot c5. So it's very rare that in endgames you have tactical shots, but this is winning because there's nothing white can do. It's paralysis. If you take on c5, bc5, and it's zugzwang, which is the term which means that no matter what you move, you lose something. It's a ridiculous position, actually. You can't push this because I take. You can't move your king anywhere unless you go here, and then if king here, I play the stunning move king to f5. I force your rook to move, and the rook goes here, takes, this pawn is stopped, this pawn is going. The game is over. And, I mean, I'm not saying that Alireza should have seen it. I'm saying the post-game analysis shows you this. It's a really nice idea, just c5. But Alireza can win this game by drawing it, because it's the Armageddon. So he goes here, he goes rook e3, comes back, rook f3. Magnus is going in with the rook. c5 now takes, rook here, and Alireza lost on time. And, yeah, slammed the table with his fist, and that's that. And that's why I'm getting some deja vu. The second time, high-stakes speed game against Magnus Carlsen over the board, and he loses on time again. In fact, it's the last time they played a speed game over the board, this same thing happened because all their games have been online this year because of coronavirus. Wow. That sums up Firouzja's last few months in 2020. That is astounding. Bummer. But he gets 1 point for his effort. Magnus 1.5. And after 2 days of the Norway Chess, 2 people... sorry, no, not 2 people. 2 people have 4 points and are ahead of Magnus Carlsen, who only has 3. But Fabiano Caruana is on fire. He has 6 out of 6. 2 classical game wins. Duda and Tari both 0 for 2 in the classical portion, looking to get on the board. Recaps will continue every day. And tournament coverage is at 11 a.m. Eastern over on Twitch, on my Twitch channel. If you're not there already, YouTubers, you should be there. Twitch, who's watching right now, gets to watch me film these things and other things. So till next time, till tomorrow, be safe, be good. Hope you're enjoying the tournament so far.